He got interested, and then he fought for me to do it. The studio tried everything to keep me out of the film, and finally it settled with Paul and I meeting. So we met in his apartment in New York, and this has a lot to do with Paul as a person and why he and I...
In the fading light of his later years, Robert Redford sits quietly. No cameras, no scripts, no stage directions, just a man staring back at a life bigger than the silver screen. His voice carries that warm, familiar honesty we all remember. A little slower now, but every word still hits with the same reflective truth that made audiences hang on his every line. Once, when asked what he learned from Paul Newman, Redford's smile was soft but certain. He's a very honest man, and a very generous man. Those are the two things that hit me. It was more than a tribute. It was a confession of respect, admiration, and brotherhood. For Redford, Newman wasn't just a co-star. He was the man who backed him when no one else would. When we worked on Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, the studio didn't want me, Redford recalled. They said I wasn't well known enough, but Paul said, let's go with this guy. Had it not been for him, I wouldn't have been in the film that moment. Quiet, monumental, and life-changing for both. One star was shining, the other was just starting to rise. Together, they didn't just become actors, they became legends, not because Hollywood decided so, but because they saw something real in each other beyond fame. Today, we revisit that story. A trust built on a dusty movie set, carried through decades of laughter, mischief, and respect. This isn't just Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. It's the story of two men who became brothers in silence and stayed that way, even when the studio said no. It was 1968, and Hollywood ran on names, faces, and box office clout. Newman had all three. He was already the man of the hour. Blue-eyed charm, golden reputation.
Had it not been for Paul, I wouldn't have been in the film. It just wouldn't have happened. It was very generous for a guy to take that kind of a chance. And then once he was in, they changed the title. Once he's going to play Butch Cassidy, it's Butch Cassidy in the Sundance Kid.
The kind of guy who could make or break a film. And then there was Redford, magnetic, talented, but still an outsider. When Butch Cassidy went into production, the studio had one rule: no unknowns. Redford, fresh from a few small films, was the exact risk they refused to take. He would later recall that painful chapter with quiet honesty. The studio did not want me because I was not well known like he was. Paul was already a pretty big name, and I'd just done a couple of films. But then, three men changed history. Director George Roy Hill, writer William Goldman, and Paul Newman, who Redford had never met. Hill saw potential. Goldman liked his energy, but it was Newman who made the choice that flipped everything. He looked at the young actor and said, let's go with this guy. That wasn't just casting, it was a vote of faith. A veteran reaching out and saying, I see you. A bond was born. A bond that would last decades. Redford later admitted, had it not been for Paul, I wouldn't have been in that film. It just wouldn't have happened. That single decision defied the studio, rewrote casting history, and forged one of the most legendary partnerships in cinema. But beyond the movies, it sparked something even deeper. A quiet trust between two men who didn't need words to understand each other. As the cameras rolled and the world fell in love with Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, no one knew the loyalty that began in those casting meetings would outlast fame, fortune, and even life itself. The day Butch met Sundance, before the world knew them as outlaws, they were just two actors meeting for the first time. One already a household name, the other a quiet talent finding his place. Paul Newman, at the peak of his fame, carried effortless confidence. Robert Redford arrived with humility and that calm intensity that would later define him. They didn't meet under blinding lights. Instead, it was in quiet corners, through conversations, curiosity, and instincts that clicked. Redford once said, I didn't know Paul, I hadn't met him.
Your girl is lovely, Hubble. Why don't you bring her for a drink when you come?
I can't.
I was the new guy, the risk, but he didn't treat me that way. He treated me like a partner. From that first exchange, something ignited. No ego, no tension, just playful sparks that lit up every scene. Newman's humor flowed naturally, Redford's timing was instinctive, and together they weren't just acting, they were in rhythm. Director George Roy Hill noticed immediately. He later said when Redford and Newman walked onto a set, the whole atmosphere shifted. It wasn't acting, he insisted. It was chemistry. But beneath the surface, it was deeper, understanding. Newman saw in Redford a quiet rebellion, a refusal to play by Hollywood's rules. Redford saw in Newman a man who carried fame lightly, who made kindness look effortless. Redford smiled in a later interview, remembering those early days. We started talking, laughing, and then working together just felt easy. It didn't feel like making a movie, it felt like creating something bigger. As Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid took shape, the magic between them became undeniable. Every look, every smirk, every line felt alive because it was alive. It wasn't just performance, it was trust captured on film. That was the day Butch met Sundance, not as characters, but as kindred spirits. And though neither knew it, they were beginning a partnership that would outlast every film they'd ever make. For Redford, the outlaw spirit of the Sundance Kid wasn't just a role, it was personal, almost spiritual. While others saw a charming outlaw, Redford saw a reflection of himself, a quiet rebel, a dreamer who never fit neatly into Hollywood's rules. Originally, he recalled, they wanted him to play Butch Cassidy because of a Broadway comedy, but he told George Roy Hill, "That's not the character that interests me. The one I identify with is the other guy, the Sundance Kid." They met in a bar on 3rd Avenue to talk it through. 2 men, 2 drinks, and a script that would soon make cinematic history. Redford remembered saying, "I think I've always had a slight outlaw sensibility. That's who I am. I feel more connected to that character. That one conversation changed everything." Hill, intrigued by Redford's honesty, began seeing the story differently. The script was even originally titled The Sundance Kid and Butch Cassidy before the studio flipped it once Newman was confirmed for the lead. But what mattered wasn't the order of the names, it was the bond forming behind them. Redford and Newman understood the outlaw spirit in each other. Both were rebels in their own ways. Newman, the Hollywood darling who despised fame's shallow side. Redford, the quiet outsider who wanted art to mean something real on screen. That energy? Electric. Redford played Sundance with quiet power, charm, and a cool restraint, while Newman's Butch radiated confidence and warmth. Together, they created something rare. 2 men not competing for the spotlight, but sharing it fully. In a later reflection, Redford said, "I think I was born with a little rebellion in me." Paul got that. He didn't try to change it, he let it be. That understanding became their secret weapon. Behind every smirk, every shared glance in Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid was the recognition of 2 men who knew life enough to understand that being an outlaw wasn't about breaking rules. It was about staying true to yourself. And then there was laughter, endless jokes, tricks, and trust. Behind all the talk of chemistry and craft, what truly bonded Redford and Newman was the laughter behind the cool stares and gunfights. Their friendship thrived on pranks, playful rivalry, and endless fun. Redford laughed remembering it. Paul loved to mess with people. A prankster at heart, a little boy in a man's body. On set, Newman's humor was legendary. He swapped Redford's bike seat mid-scene, nearly sending him tumbling. Another time, he quietly loosened the screws on Redford's chair. Just before an interview, when Redford sat down, the chair collapsed. The whole crew erupted in laughter. Redford's payback, subtle, clever, and relentless. Newman's car mysteriously filled with confetti. His lunch replaced with raw onions. Shoes glued to the trailer floor. It became a game, not of competition, but of affection. Each prank saying, "I know you, I trust you." Redford later said he never minded being the butt of a joke as long as it was funny. Humor, he knew, kept everyone human. Their bond thrived between laughter and loyalty. Fame didn't make them strangers, they remained grounded. Redford admired how Newman balanced success with humility, never taking himself too seriously. He had this wonderful mischief, Redford remembered. He could make you laugh even when things weren't going right. That's why everyone loved him. He reminded us not to take life too seriously. That humor bled into their performances. The teasing, the playful banter, the shared glances, all of it made audiences feel they'd known each other for years. It wasn't acting, it was real. And when the cameras stopped rolling, that laughter followed them through decades. New projects, family milestones, and even as time slowed them both down. For Redford, these moments weren't about fame or films. They were about friendship built on laughter, tricks, and unshakable trust. When The Sting hit theaters in 1973, 4 years after Butch Cassidy, Redford and Newman reunited, and the world couldn't get enough. Beneath all the smooth cons and dazzling confidence was something far more genuine, a bond of complete trust. By then, both were icons. Newman, the blue-eyed star with a string of hits and a growing legend. Redford, the rising Hollywood force, charismatic, careful, quietly ambitious. But on set, there was no ego, no rivalry, just two craftsmen in perfect rhythm. It was like slipping on an old glove. Redford said of their reunion, "Everything just fit. We didn't even need to talk. We just knew what the other would do." In an industry built on appearances, trust like that was rare, and they had it in spades. But Paul Newman did. Grounded, honest, and funny in the most human way. During the filming of The Sting, Newman would cut through tension with that trademark grin and dry wit. When a tricky scene dragged on for hours, he'd nudge Redford and whisper, "You think the audience will notice we're making this up?" Redford would smirk and fire back, "Only if you keep talking." The crew loved it. Their energy was effortless, like a song they both knew by heart. That spark turned The Sting into more than a film. It became a masterpiece, a story about friendship disguised as a con game. Redford reflected later, "It wasn't just the story that worked, it was us." Paul never saw acting as a competition. Redford said he treated it as collaboration. That rare approach off-screen deepened their bond. They'd talk about family, art, and the absurdity of fame. Both valued privacy, lived far from Hollywood noise, and respected the life the other had built. The Sting became more than a movie. It became a symbol of respect, humor, and trust. Two men who didn't just act together, they believed in each other. In his later years, Redford spoke with quiet reverence whenever Newman's name came up. The sparkle in his eyes softened, his tone changed. Not like remembering a co-star, but like recalling a brother. In one interview, Redford leaned back, thoughtful, voice low and sincere. "You don't get many friendships like that in this business. Most fade when the cameras stop rolling. Ours didn't. Ours lasted rare in Hollywood, where image and fleeting alliances rule. They stayed bound by genuine affection and loyalty. Through decades, across fame, aging, and loss, their friendship remained steady. It was never loud or performative. They didn't need to show up at every party or pose for every photo. Instead, they sent quiet messages, pulled pranks from across the country, and checked in without fanfare. When Newman founded Newman's Own, Redford was one of the first to support it. When Redford launched Sundance, Newman cheered him on. No envy, no pride, only respect. Redford once said, "Paul was one of the few people I could count on to tell me the truth, not the Hollywood truth, the real truth." When Newman passed in 2008, Redford didn't rush to make statements or public tributes. Instead, he withdrew, reflective, private, letting silence speak the depth of his loss. Later, when he finally spoke, he said quietly, "There's a void. Now, I can't imagine a world without him." Those words, quiet yet heavy, carried decades of shared laughter, work, and trust. Redford knew their story wasn't just about two actors who made history. It was about two men who found each other at the right time in life and never let that bond break. Even years later, he admitted that on set or watching a Utah sunset, he'd sometimes think Paul would have loved this. Their friendship was timeless, not because of fame or films, but because it was built on something real in a world that rarely is. "He was my friend," Redford said softly. "That's the best thing I can ever say about anyone." In those words lies the heart of their story. Two men, two legacies, and a friendship that defied time itself. In the end, Redford didn't speak of Newman like a star. He spoke of him like family. "He was my friend," he repeated quietly. Their bond outlasted fame, awards, and even time. When Newman passed, Redford felt the silence of a world missing its brightest laugh. Yet he never mourned publicly. Instead, he honored his friend the only way he knew how, by remembering the laughter, the lessons, and the grace they shared. Two men, two legacies, one friendship that defined a generation. Thanks for joining us on Hollywood Yesterday Channel. If you love diving into the untold stories behind the stars, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. We bring you closer to the legends, the friendships, and the moments that shaped Hollywood forever.